This podfic contains content that may be disturbing for some viewers, including mentions of violence, guns, and physical and emotional abuse. Please check out the complete list of content warnings in the description, and proceed with caution if you are sensitive to these topics.
Hello, my love little gemstones. It's Saphira, and today I'll be reading When the Chips Are Down by Whiskey with Patron. Chapter 42. I'm mad at Janus, but he looks tired, so I'll cut him some slack. When Janus got home, he wasn't expecting to be faced with an angry 15-year-old. He opened the door and let out a sigh. He was tired and overwhelmed, but at the same time, he felt better than he had in a while. Dealing with the leader of Wrath's Blade was exhausting, yet invigorating. It had been a long time since Janus allowed himself to get angry.
Hey, Chimera.
Janus looked up. Virgil stood there in the living room in front of him, arms crossed. Roman and Remus were both curled up on the couch together, staring at him with twin expressions of curiosity. "Hello, Virgil," Janus said. "Where is everyone else?"
"Upstairs. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about."
He gestured to Roman and Remus, narrowing his eyes at Janus.
"What the hell happened?" he snapped.
Janus's shoulders slumped. He didn't have the energy to deal with this right now. "Logan and I lost track."
"You were supposed to watch them," Virgil shouted.
"I know,
Why didn't you keep an eye on them? How did they get kidnapped?"
"Virgil, please," Janus interrupted. He had just gotten repeatedly yelled at by one of the most angry people on the planet. He didn't have the patience for this. Virgil took a step back. He crossed his arms again, but he lowered his glare.
"What happened?" he asked quieter, his tone still cold.
Janus took a deep breath. "I didn't want this to happen any more than you did. Logan and I got into a slight argument, and we lost track of time. We never meant to let this happen. I'm sorry. Not just to you, Virgil, but to both of you," he said, looking at Roman and Remus. "I really am sorry." Virgil chewed on his bat necklace.
"Okay, I get it. You're off the hook, Chimera. Just because you look like you got revived from the dead and you want to crawl back into your own grave." He grimaced. "But I'm still fucking upset with you."
"I understand," Janus said, relieved that Virgil wasn't going to grill him for details at the moment. "I'm going to go upstairs for a few minutes, and then we'll figure something out for supper." He didn't wait for a response before he made his way upstairs. How he could even hope to focus on something as menial as what to have for supper after the day they've all had, he had no idea. But he'd be damned if he didn't try. He wanted to collapse and go to sleep as soon as he entered the room, but he had a few problems to deal with first. One of those problems was Logan. Janus walked into his room to see Logan sitting on the bed, laptop in front of him, muttering to himself as he typed. His tie was crooked and his hair was disheveled. He looked up when Janus stepped in. "Ah, Janus." He pushed his glasses up his nose. "How was your meeting with the leader of Wrath?" Janus shut the door and leaned against it. "Infuriating, but liberating." Logan raised a brow. "Liberating." Janus pushed off the door and shucked off his jacket. "I don't often let myself get angry. With him, we can scream back and forth to our heart's content. It's tiring, but I enjoy it, to a degree." "That doesn't sound like a healthy relationship," Logan commented. "We don't need to have a healthy relationship. We're strictly enemies. Nothing more, nothing less." Janus tossed his jacket to the floor and walked over to the bed. He sat on the edge and looked at Logan. "We never got to finish our conversation from earlier, did we?" Logan tensed. He took his hands away from his keyboard. "What conversation?" "Darling, you're too smart to play dumb. You know exactly what I'm talking about." Logan paused. He shut his laptop. "I know," he muttered. Janus scooted closer to Logan on the bed. "I know you're afraid to talk about it, darling, but I would like to sort this out. Why does it frustrate you so much when you don't know things?" Logan tugged on his tie. "I don't know. Are you sure it's not a problem?" Janus reached out and took Logan's hand. "Moonlight, you can tell me anything, I promise. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but maybe I can help." Logan squeezed Janus's hand. "It's complicated," he muttered. "I just don't think that I feel the right way about things. I want someone to tell me how to feel so I know I'm not feeling wrong." Janus took Logan's hand in both of his and ran his thumb across Logan's knuckles. He didn't know why Logan felt that way, but he wasn't about to prod him for answers. He raised one hand and set it on Logan's cheek. "Life has not been kind to you, has it, Moonlight?" Logan blinked furiously, like he was holding back tears. He leaned into Janus's hand. "It's complicated," he whispered. Janus sighed. He wished more than anything that he could help Logan. But it would probably take a lot more time before Logan was ready to open up about anything. Janus planted a kiss on Logan's forehead. "We've all had a rough day. I'll tell you what. How about we put on some pajamas, you go pick out a movie to watch, and I'll order pizza for all of us." Logan smiled a little. "That might help." "Like a family movie night?" Mr. Chimera shrugged as he paced back and forth in the downstairs living room, holding his phone in front of him. "Sure, why not? I mean, we've all had a rough day. You had a full-on panic attack at the university," he said to DW. He gestured to the twins. "Those two were kidnapped, for goodness sake. Diana had to deal with talking to me about her girlfriend, who's currently in a coma. Logan has some serious self-worth issues he needs to work through. Virgil had to deal with, 5 mental breakdowns over the past few days?" "Only 4, Virgil corrected from where he sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "But yeah, it's been brutal." He wasn't actually paying attention to his phone. It was hard to when Janus was talking. "And I had to talk to the most infuriating man on Earth, and now I'm exhausted." Mr. Chimera peered at his phone screen. "Say, how many pieces of pizza do you kids generally eat in one sitting? DW usually eats half a pizza by herself. I only have 3 pieces at most, and Logan tends to only have 2. I need to know if we need to buy 2 or 3 pizzas." DW heaved a sigh. "Jan, you're overthinking it. Just get 3 and we'll have leftovers. And make sure there are onions and mushrooms on my side of the pizza." "No onions, please," Virgil called without looking up. "I hate the way they feel when you bite them. No mushrooms either." "Noted." Janus turned to the others. "Diana, Roman, Remus, any input?" Diana jumped when Janus said her name, as if she hadn't been expecting him to address her. I'm okay with anything." She paused. "Actually, I like pepperoni. That's my only request."
"I'm down for whatever,"
Roman said.
"I want pineapple,"
Remus piped up. Janus started typing their order into his phone. "What movie are we watching? Logan, have you chosen what you want to watch?" The door to the dining room opened. Mr. Minder shuffled out in a pair of pajama pants and a t-shirt with a bright yellow snake on it. He straightened his glasses. I don't know," he muttered. Janus paused next to Mr. Minder in his pacing and planted a kiss on his cheek. "Let me know when you decide." Mr. Minder sighed. It's kind of stupid." "Nothing you say is stupid," Janus said. Mr. Minder glanced at the TV. "Well, Treasure Planet is on Netflix." Diana sat up with a smile. "That's my favorite movie. I'll get it set up." She grabbed the remote off the coffee table. Roman nodded in approval.
"A classic Disney movie. You have good taste, nerd."
He looked Mr. Minder up and down.
"Well, in movies, at least. Your fashion sense could use some work."
"To be fair, that is one of my shirts," Janus said. "It's my fashion sense you're criticizing."
"Well, it couldn't hurt you to wear something other than a suit every once in a while," Roman commented.
Mr. Minder shrugged. "I, for one, think he looks lovely in a suit." Virgil fake gagged. He scrambled out of his chair. "I'm gonna go throw up. And put on my pajamas." He pointed at Roman and Remus. "Don't get kidnapped while I'm gone." Remus gave him a thumbs up and a crooked grin.
"You got it, Virg."
Virgil glared at Janus. "Watch them." He turned and went upstairs. He didn't really want to let Roman and Remus out of his sight. Not after knowing that they got kidnapped after being left in Janus and Logan's care. He gave Roman and Remus one last nervous glance before he retreated into the dining room to go upstairs. He quickly changed into his pajamas and threw his sweater on over top. He didn't particularly know why Janus was offering to have a movie night with all of them, but Virgil didn't really want to skip out on it. He, Roman, and Remus usually had movie nights with Dad when they were all having tough days. This was something familiar, something he enjoyed. Maybe it was just the thing he needed after a day like this. Virgil made for the door, but he paused when he looked at his nightstand. Right next to where Draculara was propped up on her stand was the letter Dad had written him. He still hadn't read the first part of it. A pang of sadness hit his heart as soon as he laid eyes on it. Dad had only been gone for a few days. Virgil really, really missed him. He took the letter and shoved it in his pocket. He would read it later tonight. Or tomorrow. Maybe. When he got downstairs, Diana was sitting on the floor in front of the TV, eagerly waiting for everyone else to be ready to start watching. Logan sat crisscross on the couch next to DW, while Roman and Remus were busy whispering back and forth with each other. Janus was still pacing the living room in his yellow pajamas, for once without the gloves he usually sported. He still wore that necklace he'd been wearing all day, but he'd put the pendant in his mouth and was rolling it between his teeth.
"That's not a chewable pendant, is it?" Virgil said.
Janus paused in his pacing. He spat out the pendant. "I didn't know I was doing that." Logan glanced over. "Jan, were you doing the chewing thing again?"
"If by the chewing thing you mean he just put something random in his mouth and bit it, then yeah," Virgil said.
Janus's face flushed with embarrassment. He crossed his arms. "Well, you can't exactly judge me." Virgil glanced down at his bat necklace.
"Touché, Chimera. You got me there."
"You can buy a chew necklace," DW said, playfully kicking out at Janus's leg. "Just stop chewing on your hand. Go put on your gloves." Janus blinked, as if he'd only just realized he'd started gnawing on the skin on the back of his thumb. He took his hand away from his mouth and sighed. "I'll go find something to occupy my mouth, then." He turned and walked down the hall towards the kitchen.
As long as it's not Logan's.
Remus stopped short before he could finish his joke, regret written on every inch of his face. Diana covered her mouth, stifling her shocked laughter. DW snorted but covered it up with a cough. Roman hit Remus with a throw pillow, and then covered his ears, just in case Remus decided to keep talking. Logan narrowed his eyes. "Do you want to finish that sentence, Remus?" Remus glanced at Logan, then Diana, then Roman.
"Penis!"
he shouted. He scrambled to his feet and scampered off towards the bathroom door, cackling like a madman. Virgil snorted. At least Roman and Remus seemed to be holding up okay, despite the hard day they had. That might change when it came time to go to bed, but he hoped they would be able to sleep at least. Then again, Remus had never really been able to sleep well, but hopefully Roman wouldn't be too haunted by getting kidnapped that he couldn't get any rest. Virgil turned to the hallway.
"I'm gonna get a snack. Let me know when the pizza gets here."
DW gave him a thumbs up. He walked up to the kitchen door. He nudged it open and peeked inside. Janus stood at the sink, washing his hands. He shut off the faucet and shook his hands to dry them, grimacing as he did so.
"Is the chewing thing why you wear gloves?" Virgil blurted.
Janus looked up. He grabbed a towel and vigorously scrubbed his hands dry. "Partially," he said. "Why do you ask?" Virgil shrugged. "Just curious." He furrowed his brow. He had another question, but he wasn't sure if asking that would be too personal. "Something on your mind?" Janus asked. Virgil hesitated. "I don't know if I should ask. If it's about me, I can almost guarantee that whatever it is, it won't offend me." Janus set the towel down. He cringed. "God, I hate washing my hands." He walked to the pantry and started rummaging through it. Virgil steeled his nerves.
Are you autistic?"
"Yes," Janus said, to Virgil's surprise. "In all honesty, I thought that it was obvious. It's undiagnosed, because the only therapist I'm willing to see is a man who's married to my cousin. Former cousin, long story. But since we're legally related, he can't diagnose me with anything." He grabbed a container of popcorn kernels off a shelf. "Hey, do you and your brothers like popcorn?"
Yeah."
Virgil tugged at his necklace.
You're not making a big deal out of that? You're just chill with me asking that?"
"Yes, why wouldn't I be?" Janus set the popcorn on the counter and rummaged through a cupboard.
"I don't know. All my foster parents treated it like a bad thing. That's just kind of what I expect from adults."
Virgil hauled himself onto the island and sat down, swinging his legs.
"Speaking of parents, you did promise me an explanation of what happened with you and my dad."
Janus paused. "Oh, right. I nearly forgot." He grabbed a pot from the cupboard and set it on the stove. "Are you quite sure you want to hear it?"
"Yeah."
"I don't know anything about what Dad had to do with your business. I want to know." Janus turned on the stove. "Well, in short, your father was an assassin 10 years ago. DW and I had just become the leaders of Chimera, and your father was hired to kill me. He didn't go through with it."
"There has to be more to it than that," Virgil said. "Why is he on the run now? What does Logan have to do with any of this? Why do you owe Dad a favor?"
"Logan actually had nothing to do with your father's career," Janus said. He glanced at the open door, as if making sure no one else was listening. "Logan doesn't even know about it," he said in a hushed voice. So keep this under wraps for now. Virgil raised an eyebrow. Mr. Minder doesn't know Dad used to be an assassin? But they've been friends since they were kids. Friends can keep secrets, Janus said. There are things DW and I have to keep from each other concerning our job. It's all for the good of the other person, in most cases. Patton never told Logan, likely because he didn't know Logan was part of the criminal underground himself. However, even if he did know Logan was a hacker, he probably wouldn't have said anything. Patton was very well known back then. He still is, really. He's almost a legend.
But who hired him to kill you?
Wrath's Blade, back when it was run by the current leader's father. Virgil blinked.
Wait, but isn't Wrath the group of people that Dad is running from?
Exactly. Janus poured a cup of popcorn kernels into the pot with some cooking oil. Patton went against the contract he was bound to. Instead of killing me, he killed the old leader of Wrath. Ever since then, the old leader's son has been hell-bent on finding Patton. He did a good job of hiding himself. It's been 10 years, and Wrath has only just found him.
So, Dad used to work for them, Virgil said. He found that a little hard to believe. Dad was the nicest man Virgil had ever met, and Wrath's Blade sounded so bad.
Yes, but... Janus raised a finger to his lips. You didn't hear that from me. Secret stuff.
If you're telling me, why won't you tell Mr. Minder?
Janus's grin fell. That's a little complicated. I don't know what Logan's reaction would be if he knew. I mean, telling you is easy. You're Patton Hart's son, but you don't even know the first thing about this business. You just think it's cool that your father was like those hitmen from the movies. You're not personally affected by it. Patton was the most infamous assassin in America for years. He's responsible for so much damage, and he did all of that while going to university with Remy and Logan. If Logan found out Patton used to be that dangerous, I don't know what he would do.
Is that why you owe Dad? Because he didn't kill you?
Precisely. He risked his life by going against Wrath's Blade. Janus put a lid over the pot and leaned against the counter. He bit at the skin around the nail of his thumb. Virgil idly kicked his legs.
How long was he working with Wrath?
Janus stopped biting in his hand for a moment. That's a question I think Patton should answer. A popcorn kernel popped on the stove. Janus took the pot and swished the popcorn around as it began to pop. "We're starting the movie," Diana called from the other room. "Also, the pizza's here," Mr. Minder's voice shouted. "We'll be out in a minute," Janus yelled. He nodded towards the door. "You want to go watch the movie? I'll be there as soon as I'm done with the popcorn."
Is that all you have to tell me about Dad?
Well, there's not much more to the story that I can tell you. I know your father had some powerful allies and strong connections in this business, and he severed almost all of them when he faked his death. He left most of his family behind when he did that, but I don't blame him. His family wasn't great.
He faked his death? Virgil gasped. Hang on, you forgot to mention that before. Is Dad, legally dead?
Not quite. He only faked the death of himself as an assassin. Poison Dart is dead to the world, but Patton Hart is alive.
Poison Dart, Virgil whispered. A thrill of excitement rushed through him. That's so cool. He had an alter ego? Like a supervillain?
Janus chuckled. I guess you could call it that. Poison Dart was feared across the country. Still is, really. But your father's let go of that life. That's why he's running from it. He shook the pot of popcorn. Why don't you go out and watch the movie? This is going to be done soon, anyway. Virgil hopped off the island.
Sure. Thanks for telling me about that, Chimera.
Janus shrugged. I figured you would want to know, considering that interest of yours in assassins. Besides, if I didn't tell you, you would just keep asking and asking and asking. Virgil nudged Janus with his elbow.
Yeah, okay, I get it,
he said with a grin. He started for the door, but he paused as he remembered his and Diana's conversation from earlier. It couldn't hurt to ask, could it?
Hey, Janus?
Virgil took a deep breath.
So, Dad never got us into therapy. Partially because I was too scared and Remus thought he didn't need it. But also because we're not legally his kids, so he couldn't. But you do illegal shit all the time, right?
Janus turned away from the stove to look at Virgil. You want me to get you into therapy?
Virgil nodded. I think so. Maybe. I don't know. How soon could you do it?
Well, Janus muttered, I could probably call Emil Picani and get him to talk to you as soon as tomorrow. The man is a trained therapist, as well as a certified Chimera leader. He'll be doing some damage control around the bank anyway, since things have gotten a little crazy around Clawmore lately, and we could use the extra help. Is tomorrow too early? Virgil considered it. Well, what time tomorrow? Janus shrugged. We'll be meeting him between 9 and 10, and we'll be sorting things out for a while, but I'm sure he'll make time for you. The man always tries to cram his schedule as full as possible. If he wasn't busy at all hours of the day, I think he would implode. Virgil felt a spike of anxiety, but along with that anxiety came a little bit of relief. He could get some help. Some real, actual help. I'll think about it. Virgil turned to the door. I'll save you some pizza. Chapter 43. A lesbian breaks me out of jail. Remy lunged to his feet and glared at Price through the bars of his cell. What the hell are you doing here? Busting you out of jail. What does it look like? Price scoffed. Remy turned his glower to Ace. Why did you bring her here? Ace shrugged. You wanted to see her. She and I both want to get you out of jail. Killing two birds with one stone. Why do you want to get me out? Remy snapped at Price. Price sighed. It's complicated, man. Just let me help you out of here. No, I won't let you help me, Remy said. You hurt Andy. You can't just hurt my best friend and assume I'm going to be fine with you. You sold Patton out to your stupid friends, and now I'm in jail. His kids are kidnapped, one of my friends was shot, and I don't even know where Andy is. This was your fault in the first place. And now I'm trying to fix it, Price snapped. She took a deep breath. Just let me help. Even if I wanted to let you help me, which I don't, by the way, I couldn't just leave. Wrath kidnapped two of Patton's kids, and they're going to kill them if I don't get Patton to them. If you can somehow find a way to fix that, then maybe I would consider going with you. Ace snorted. Buddy, you haven't heard? Ace, Chandler confiscated my phone. I haven't heard of anything about anyone for the past 5 hours. Ace grinned. Some kind of mystery mob in masks broke into one of Wrath's warehouses. 2 kids were snatched. It's been one of the most talked about things for the past few hours, other than your precious Patton cake showing up at the Critic House. Some people were saying he's the critic's sweetheart, and I honestly don't doubt it. He's staying in the penthouse, for Christ's sake. Apparently the hotel staff is keeping an eye out for some people too, Price added. Me and you included, Sunglasses. I think Deadshot's pulling some strings he forgot he had. Remy blinked as that information sank in. Someone broke into Wrath and took 2 kids. They could have been any kids and any gang, but knowing Patton and his connections with Chimera, it wasn't a coincidence. Were there any specification on what the kids looked like? Remy asked. Nope, Ace said. But it did happen while the leader of Chimera in Clawmore was meeting with the leader of Wrath. He shrugged. Coincidence? Probably not, Remy whispered. He breathed a sigh of relief, feeling as though a weight just lifted off his shoulders. The twins were probably safe. Ace reached through the bars. By the way, here's your phone. I nicked it back from Chandler. Remy took it and looked at the screen. A text from Patton stared at him, but he ignored it. He went to his messages and texted Andy. Can you look into any break-ins that happened with Wrath today? Don't tell Patton, but 2 of his kids were kidnapped, and I need to know if they're safe. He started pacing again as he waited for an answer. What are you doing? Price asked. Checking to see if Patton's kids are okay, Remy answered. A text from Andy appeared. Dude, I helped with a break-in today. One of Chimera's hackers asked me to help out. They even specified that the kids are Patton's, and he gave me confirmation that they're safe. I can probably ask the guy to send pictures of the kids if you're that worried about it. Not guaranteed, though. Remy lowered his phone as a wave of relief washed over him. Oh my God, he whispered. He felt like he might even cry. They were safe. Not only that, but Andy helped save them. You okay there, Sunglasses? You need a minute? Remy shoved his phone into his pocket. Get me out of here. Price grinned. Finally. He held a hand out to Ace, who dropped a keyring into her hands. She unlocked the cell and opened the door. Don't attack me right away, Sunglasses. We still have to get you to your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend, Remy corrected.
Probably because he's fucking the critic, Ace snorted. Remy elbowed Ace in the side. He narrowed his eyes at Price. He was still mad at her, but getting out of this place was his top priority. He didn't have time to fight with her. Ace nudged the door open. Let's get the hell out of here. Remy followed Ace and Price out of the cells.
Detective Spencer, somebody's voice said. Is the guy Chandler brought in doing okay?
Oh, yeah, he's the bee's knees, Ace said, purposely aiming his flashlight at the other person's face. Did you check the breaker room?
Yeah, bunch of wires were cut. Someone's probably still in the station. Keep an eye out. I don't know what they're doing here.
You got it, Copper. The other person walked off. Price glanced at Remy.
Most of the officers are home right now, she whispered. Just be quiet, if you can actually shut that mouth of yours for once. Remy wanted to snap back at her, but he couldn't get them caught. Ace stepped out into the station. He slung an arm over an officer's shoulders and led them away from Remy and Price. He shot a wink over his shoulder at Remy. Remy scowled. Price took Remy's arm and dragged him to the door. He yanked his arm out of her grip and followed behind her. No one noticed them in the darkness. Someone glanced in their direction, but Ace sidled up to the person and started up a conversation, shooting a not-so-subtle wink in Remy's direction. Price pushed the front door open and slipped outside. Remy followed her, shutting the door. Price hopped down the steps, pulling her car keys from her pocket. All right, Sunglasses, let's get you back to your man. Remy grabbed her arm and pulled her to a stop. Wait a damn minute. We're out of there now. You have some goddamn explaining to do. Price rolled her eyes. We can talk in the car. We shouldn't stay here when you just broke out of jail. Remy hated that she had a point. He followed her down the steps to a pristine black Rolls-Royce parked along the side of the road. Remy sat in the passenger seat as Price started the car. Okay, now start talking, Remy said. Give me an explanation as to why you hurt Andy and sold Patton out, and then suddenly decided you wanted to come back and help. Price sighed as she pulled away from the curb. Look, I honestly don't know. I got a text from one of my buddies saying we were going after Patton because one of them was trying to narrow down his location, and I didn't want to back out. That's it. I didn't want them to think I was a coward, okay? I'll apologize to Andy as soon as I see her. She tugged on the gold necklace around her throat, eyes fixed on the road. Remy narrowed his eyes. He didn't know if he bought that explanation, but he didn't want to grill her for information. She was giving him a free ride to the Critic House. She could easily kick him out of the car and make him walk. I still don't trust you, he said. I know. She ran her thumb over the pendant on her necklace. I didn't mean to hurt her, she said, her voice quiet. Well, you hurt her anyway, Remy snapped. I want to fix that. I'll believe that when I see it. The rest of the drive was quiet, uncomfortably so. Remy didn't want to talk to her. He didn't even want to let her near Andy or Patton, but there wasn't much he could do to stop her, short of threatening her at gunpoint, which he couldn't even do because Chandler confiscated the gun he'd borrowed from Thomas. The Critic House came into view. Remy had never seen it before, and he wondered why it was considered such an important place. It looked like it was falling apart at the seams, with all its cracked windows and missing bricks. He wouldn't have thought it was actually the Critic House if not for the sign above the door that specifically said Critic House. It was missing a couple of letters, so it actually said CRTICHOUE. He found it hard to believe that anyone actually stayed here, despite the amount of cars in the lot. It looked abandoned. Price pulled into the parking lot. She and Remy hopped out of the car and made their way to the door. Remy kept a fair distance from her, unwilling to even be in her direct presence. The doors swung open, and Remy was struck dumb. He had not been expecting the place to look so fancy on the inside. Luxurious couches and lounge chairs were scattered around the lobby, and each one was occupied by people in suits and dresses, drinking wine from fancy glasses. A chandelier hung from the ceiling. Hardly anyone looked up as they walked in. Holy shit, Remy whispered. Price took his arm and dragged him in. Yeah, it's a lot nicer than you think. Let's go find your dumbass friends. She stopped at the front desk. We heard the critic was looking for us. Remy Dormier and Price Princeton. The receptionist looked up from his computer. He gave both of them a once-over. Yep, you looked like the guys the boss was looking for. He held up a key card out to Price. Put this in the slot in the elevator. It'll take you to the penthouse.
Thanks. Price took the card. Come on, sunglasses.
I have a name, you know.
And I don't care.
They stepped into the elevator. Price stuck the keycard into a slot above the buttons. The elevator dinged as the door slid shut. The silence in the elevator was even more awkward than the drive to the hotel. Remy just waited as the elevator took them upstairs. It was only a few seconds, but it felt like minutes. He refused to speak to Price. He wouldn't break his silence until Andy forgave her, and even then, he was determined to hold a grudge. The elevator stopped and the doors opened. Remy stepped out and his jaw dropped. Dice Critique grinned and held up a mug of coffee.
Hey, girl! I was wondering when you'd show up.
Patton, who had been leaning against Dice's shoulder, shot bolt upright. His face lit up and he scrambled to his feet.
Remy!
He ran across the floor, skidding on the fancy carpet, and collided with Remy, arms wrapping around him, his face buried in his shoulder. Remy stumbled back at the impact. He held Patton back just as tight, fingers clenched in the fabric of his shirt. He still smelled like gun smoke and gasoline from their journey, but under it all was a hint of the clean linen fabric softener he always used. Remy took a deep breath, lingering in the feeling of being by Patton's side once again. Andy stood. Oh my God. I was ready to break into the police station to get you. He stared over Patton's shoulder at his cousin, who was sitting on the lounge like he owned the place. Relief washed over Remy when he saw that Patton and Andy were okay. But that didn't overshadow his shock at seeing his dumbass cousin, the one who he assumed was just dating some rich guy for a living, in this hotel that was supposedly a big part of the crime underworld. Thomas shrugged from where he sat on the couch. I'd come say hi too, but I can barely move my arm. Nice to see we didn't have to rent a wrecking ball to destroy the police station. Remy still didn't let go of Patton. Nice to see you guys. Also, Dice, what the fuck? Why are you here? Dice grinned.
Oh, honey, you didn't think I was just someone's sugar baby for a living, did you?
That's exactly what I thought.
Dice shrugged. Fair enough.
He set his coffee down.
I own this place, he announced with a proud grin. Girl, come sit down, have some coffee.
His gaze traveled over to Price.
Oh, poison baby, it looks like we've got company.
Patton pulled away from Remy, and Remy let him go, albeit reluctantly. Patton's gaze hardened. Oh. His left index finger twitched.
Hello.
Andy looked up, and a dozen emotions flashed across her face, ranging from pain to anger to relief. She wiped all the feeling off her face in a split second, but Remy caught the pain in her eyes. Patton shifted so he was standing a little bit between Andy and Price, as if he was afraid Price was going to attack them. Thomas stood and narrowed his eyes at Price, and Remy had no doubt that Thomas would have punched her if his arm wasn't stuck in a sling. Price took a step back.
Okay, she said. I can see that I've got some explaining to do. Kick her ass, Poison, Dice shouted.
Price took a deep breath.
I'll admit, I was an asshole.
No shit, Remy mumbled. Price ignored him. I told my friends about Patton's location because they said we were going after him. And it's a lot of bounty money. Can you really blame me? Yes, Remy said.
I wasn't asking you, sunglasses.
No, I can't blame you, Patton admitted, although his expression was still hard. I would do the same, but that's not really what I'm upset about anyway. He turned to look at Andy. Andy kept her eyes on the floor, clutching the strap of her laptop bag in both hands. Price's face turned red. Well, it's gonna feel awkward apologizing with everyone here, she muttered. Andy's face fell, and Price tensed. But I will. She took a deep breath. Andy, I'm sorry. I didn't actually mean a lot of the stuff I said. I just needed to go because I didn't want to seem like I was backing out of the bounty hunt. I didn't want to ruin my reputation by seeming like I was scared. Her face flushed more. I was tempted to stay because I enjoyed your company, I guess. And you're not a bad person to hang around. I just didn't want to seem like I was going soft, you know? Her gaze flitted across everyone else in the room. Look, I broke your dumbass friend out of jail. Isn't that good enough? I don't know, Remy said. He turned to Andy. Is it? Andy finally looked over to Price. She narrowed her eyes. For now. You're lucky I don't like holding grudges, Princey. Boo! No one died, Dice called. But whatever, if you're all cool now, you can all use the guest bedrooms in the penthouse. They're just down the hall. Poison, honey, you can show them, can't you? Yeah. Patton took Remy's hand and pulled him across the room. Come on, he's got enough rooms for all of us. Remy wanted to say something. Maybe ask how the hell his cousin became the owner of such a nice hotel, or ask why Dice kept calling Patton Poison, but Patton was holding his hand, and his brain seemed to have totally short-circuited. He couldn't get a single word out of his mouth. Actually, some of them are being renovated, Dice said. Poison, would you be able to share your room with my dear cousin? Thanks. Patton grabbed his backpack as he passed by the couch. Rem, you okay with that? Remy shifted his hand in Patton's grip. Yeah, he managed. Andy strode after Patton, clipping Price's shoulder along the way. Thomas shot a glare at Price as he trailed after Andy. Price seemed to hesitate, but she shoved her hands in her pockets and walked towards the hallway. Patton stopped outside a door. This one's mine. He turned to Price and narrowed his eyes. You can take any room you want, but just know that if you try anything, I'm armed, and so are all of these security guards. The only reason I haven't kicked your ass out yet is because Andy's forgiven you, for now. I'm on the same page, Thomas said, glaring at Price. Patton opened his door. Come on, Rem. Remy followed him into the room. Patton flicked on the lights. Remy blinked in surprise at the bright blue and orange wallpaper on the walls. The room was much bigger than the average bedroom. A king-size bed was set against the wall to the left, with a TV in the wall opposite. Large open doors led to a walk-in closet in the far wall. Next to it was a door to a bathroom. Patton walked over to the bed. He sat down, clutching his bag to his chest. Rem, can we talk? His voice was small, as if he was a scared kid. He still held Remy's hand. Remy's stomach flipped. He knew this conversation was coming. You want to talk about what I saw back at the hotel? Patton raised a hand to scratch at his shoulder, the one with the tattoo on it. Yeah, but that's not all. Remy was hit by a wave of confusion, and that only added to the confusion he was already feeling because of the presence of his cousin and the fact that Patton was allowed in the penthouse of the owner of the hotel. What else do you want to talk to me about? Patton let go of Remy's hand to pat the bed in front of him, inviting Remy to sit with him. Remy did so, a little nervous as to where this conversation was going. Patton took a deep breath. I used to work for Wrath. Obviously, I mean, you saw that. I didn't have much of a choice but to work for them. I left 10 years ago, but that's not the only issue. Do you recognize the name Poison Dart? Remy thought about it. Not particularly. I've definitely heard it once or twice, but I've never asked anyone to explain it. Well, Patton said, tapping his fingers on the bag in his hands. Poison Dart was an assassin. A lot of people in this business know about him, and if they didn't know about him, they know someone who does. It's hard to take 2 steps in the underground without hearing the name a few times. Patton grimaced. I'm Poison Dart. That was the name I went by when I was working. I didn't want anyone to know who I really was, and Wrath wanted to keep it that way too. Wrath didn't want people to know that they had the greatest assassin in the country in their organization because the current leader was paranoid about people coming after us to get to me. I left Wrath when they gave me a mission to kill Janus Chimera. I killed the leader of Wrath instead. Patton flipped the bag open. The interior of the bag was as brightly colored as the wallpaper in the room, only the blue to orange gradient was decorated by black whorls, like the skin of a poison dart frog. A knife was sheathed in the side of the bag, as was a pistol. Andy found out I was Poison Dart, and she and Price went out looking for proof, Patton explained. They never found out Poison Dart used to work for Wrath, which is good because I want to keep that a secret. You're the only person I've told about this, aside from the 3 heads of Chimera in this area. Janus Chimera, Dorothy Willow Chimera, and Emil Picani Chimera are the only ones who know the full story. Well, and Dice, but that's besides the point. I'm not even telling you the full story right now. It's complicated, and I'm scared and I don't know who I can really trust. His eyes shone with tears when he looked up at Remy. But I trust you, and I just hope you don't hate me after finding out I used to work for Wrath. Remy's heart nearly broke. He couldn't stand to see Patton cry. He took Patton's hand again and squeezed it. I don't hate you, he reassured him. I was just surprised that you used to work for Wrath. You're the sweetest person I've ever met. I didn't expect it. Patton ran his thumb over Remy's knuckles. I'm sorry, he muttered. I wanted to tell you, and I'm not even telling you everything because I don't know what you would think of me. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, babe. He scooted closer to Patton and pulled him into a hug. Why don't you go have a bath or something? You've had a long day. Patton nodded as he hugged Remy back. Yeah, I might. He gave Remy a quick squeeze and raised his head. He pressed a kiss to Remy's cheek. Thanks for letting me talk, he mumbled, resting his head on Remy's shoulder. Remy's face felt like it was on fire. No problem, he whispered. His skin burned where Patton had kissed him. Patton untangled himself from Remy's arms. He set his bag on the floor and stood. Let Dice know if you need anything. He ruffled Remy's hair and walked off to the bathroom. Remy sat on the bed as he processed what just happened. The whole assassin thing was kind of obvious from the get-go, so that wasn't what he was focusing on. He pressed a hand to his cheek where Patton had kissed him. Why was the room so warm all of a sudden? Realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Oh, he was such an oblivious, gay mess. Someone knocked on the door. Are you both decent? Dice's voice called. Yeah, Remy said. What do you want? The door swung open, and Dice stepped in, a bowl in one hand. Hey, bitch. Everyone else already ate, so I thought I'd bring you something. You still like soup, right? He held out the bowl. Remy took it. Thanks, ho. If you spill on my sheets, I'll kill you. Dice sat down on the bed and crossed his legs. So, why is your face all red? Remy's face heated up more. Not your business. Dice grinned. Aw, did you finally realize that you like him? Shut up, Remy spat. He didn't want Patton to hear. Dice poked Remy's arm. Do you like him? Dude, seriously, stop it. I don't want him to know. Dice chuckled. Bitch, you need to talk to him about that. The amount of gay tension between you two is ridiculous. I might, later, Remy said, knowing full well he probably never would. Dice studied Remy's face. So, he told you about the whole poison dart thing? Remy nodded, idly stirring the soup in his bowl. I kind of figured he was an assassin, but was he actually that well known? Dice barked out a laugh. Oh, honey, you have no idea. There are legends about him. Many of my previous tenants stopped staying here because Patton frequented this place whenever he needed a break, and no one wanted to be in his line of sight. He was a wonderful fighter back then. The amount of times he started a brawl in the lounge was too many to count. I thought violence wasn't allowed here. Typically no, but I love a good bit of drama. I would never kick out my favorite tenant. I can bend my own rules if I want to. If people wanted to see him beat the shit out of someone without risking getting murdered themselves, they would often come here just to see him in action up close. He scared away some people, yes, but he also brought in business. There's no way I would ever throw him out. Dice smirked. He was also gorgeous arm candy at VIP meetings. Remy thought about what Dice just said. Why did Patton start fights? Dice shrugged. I don't know. Asserting his dominance, maybe. He was very impulsive back then. Dice examined his fingernails. You really do love him, don't you? Remy nearly spat out the soup in his mouth. What? Relax, you goddamn fruit. I don't necessarily mean romantically. You two are very close. That's obvious. His voice had taken on a more serious tone, something Remy had never heard from Dice before. But the Patton Hart you know is very different than the poison dart I knew 10 years ago. Neither of us know exactly who he is. Maybe his past aggression was all just an act. Or perhaps he's putting on an act right now, pretending to be who he thinks you see him as. I've seen Poison Dart cry once. That's all. Other than that, the only emotion I have ever gotten from him is annoyance and frustration at best. Remy raised an eyebrow, confused. What do you mean by all that? Dice turned on the bed so he was facing Remy. I mean, I only know him as Poison Dart. The man is a poison dart frog. He kills everything he touches. He is toxic in every sense of the word. To me, he's Poison Dart. To you, he's Patton Hart. To Wrath's Blade, he's someone else entirely. Dice took off his sunglasses to look Remy dead in the eye. I'm warning you, when you're around him, you have no idea who you're going to get. You've caught glimpses of Poison Dart, sure, but you've never truly seen that part of himself, just as I've never truly seen Patton Hart. Even knowing everything about his past, I have no idea who this man is. I doubt the Chimeras know either. I'm not even sure Patton himself knows who he is. I just want you to be careful, Remy. The man is a ticking time bomb, and he's going to explode one of these days. I don't want you to be caught in the blast. Dice put his sunglasses back on and stood. Be careful. Let me know if anything happens. Remy glanced behind him at the bathroom door. He heard the sound of running water, and through that, Patton's voice hummed along to whatever song was stuck in his head. I will, Remy said. Dice smiled. Good night, bitch. Night, ho. Chapter 44. I just want to sleep. No matter how hard she tried, Andy just couldn't sleep. That's not to say that she wasn't tired, though. She was absolutely exhausted from the events of the day. Her little adventure through the city with Price felt like days ago. Andy turned over in the bed in her guest room. It had been a while since she'd stayed in the Critic House. She forgot how comfortable the beds were. However, the soft mattress did nothing to lull her to sleep. She just couldn't stop thinking. Part of it was Patton. In all honesty, she was kind of scared of the guy now that she knew his past. And when she and Thomas met up with him in his hotel room, he had been nothing like the peppy father figure he had been when she met him the day prior. He was snappy and cold, and he seemed more annoyed than relieved to see them. She had chalked it up to him being tired, but still, having a dangerous assassin be annoyed at her was nerve-wracking, to say the very least. Unfortunately, the part of her that wasn't thinking about Patton was busy thinking about Price. She couldn't help it. Yeah, Price had apologized, but did she mean it? Why did she really help Remy get out of jail? She had to have some ulterior motive. Coming back to Andy served her no purpose. Andy groaned and rolled over in bed again. As angry as she was with Price, her heart skipped a beat every stupid time she thought about her. Price may have been kind of cute, and maybe, just maybe, Andy might have developed a teeny tiny crush on her, but Andy had to ignore that. Price was a jerk. Andy had dealt with her fair share of jerks in her life. She didn't need another one. She heard footsteps outside in the hall. She tried to ignore it, but they stopped right outside her door. She sat up and looked at the door. Something slid under the door. The footsteps resumed and walked away. Andy stood and tiptoed over to the door. A small piece of paper had been slid under her door. She picked it up and peered at it in the moonlight from the window. Hey, I don't know if you're still awake, but if you are, can we talk? I have a lot I want to say, but I didn't want to say it in front of everyone else. Sorry again, Price. Andy read the words a couple times to let that sink in. Price wanted to talk. Why? What did she have to say that she hadn't already said before? Andy huffed and tossed the note to the floor. She was too tired for this. She could deal with it in the morning. She crawled back into bed and closed her eyes. She didn't get to sleep for a long time. Having all the Hart kids watching a movie together proved to be more chaotic than DW originally thought it would be. Logan heaved an exhausted sigh as he tried to wrangle Roman into his arms. Roman, stop throwing popcorn at your cousin, he whispered. Roman squirmed. Come on, Specs, he whispered back. We're just having fun. Diana opened her mouth as Roman tossed her another piece of popcorn. It landed right in her mouth, and she put her arms up in a victory pose. 20th one in a row, she said through her popcorn. Let's go for a world record. Janus leaned over on the couch to see the screen past Diana's hands. Virgil nudged Janus in the side. You're in my space, old man. Logan groaned. "I just wanted to watch a movie," he muttered as Roman reached for more popcorn. Deciding that Logan had suffered enough with these kids, DW scooted across the floor and looked up at Roman. "Hey, Roman, do you think Diana could still catch it if we both throw popcorn at her?" Roman's eyes lit up. He clambered out of Logan's grip and sat on the floor with DW. Janus passed the popcorn bowl to DW so they could throw popcorn together. As DW helped Roman throw popcorn at Diana, Remus scribbled in his sketchbook, which he'd brought downstairs about halfway through the movie. He had to ask Virgil to help him up the stairs, and as soon as they were back in the living room, Remus flopped down on the floor and started drawing. DW kind of wanted to know what he was drawing, but she didn't want to pry, so she left the subject alone. Logan gave DW a look that screamed, "Thank you." He curled up on the couch next to Janus, who wrapped an arm around Logan's shoulders and squeezed him in a brief hug. On his other side, Virgil kept shifting his position in his seat. Every time DW looked over, the kid was doing something different. Right now it was mostly laying on the armrest, both legs draped over the back of the couch, so he was looking at the screen upside down. Roman giggled as he tossed another piece of popcorn to Diana. DW picked up a piece and threw it. It hit Diana's forehead, but she still managed to get it in her mouth when it bounced. The kids gradually calmed down as the movie went on. Maybe it was the fact that it was late, or maybe it was the fact that they were running out of popcorn. But either way, Roman eventually set down the bowl and turned his attention to the movie on screen. Diana followed suit now that no one was throwing any edible projectiles at her. Remus kept sketching, and Virgil finally settled into a position on the couch. DW let herself relax as the movie went on. The past few days had been hectic. She deserved a little bit of rest. Roman leaned into DW's side partway through the movie. DW let him. He'd had a difficult day. It took DW until the end of the movie to notice that the sound of pencil scratching on paper had disappeared. Remus had fallen asleep on his sketchbook. Diana had slumped against the chair behind her, snoring with her glasses crooked on her face. DW glanced down at Roman and saw that the kid's eyes were closed. "Janus," she whispered. "You awake?" "Yes," he hissed back. "Look at this, Dorothy." She turned a little and couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. Janus sat in the middle of the couch. On one side, Logan was curled right up to Janus, resting his head on Janus's chest. Clinging to Janus's other side was Virgil, wrapped up in a blanket with his bat necklace in his mouth. He had his arms and legs wrapped around Janus and didn't seem intent on letting go anytime soon. Both Logan and Virgil were sleeping. DW gently shifted Roman into her arms and stood. "I'll come back for Virgil," she said. She carefully stepped over Remus and Diana, carrying Roman to the dining room. Getting someone else up the stairs would be trial, but she could do it, she was sure. She started up the stairs, wincing a little at the extra weight on her prosthetic. Roman buried his face in her shirt as she climbed the stairs. Her heart melted at that. Goodness, these kids were absolutely precious. She reached the top of the stairs and made her way to the twins' room. She nudged the door open and peered inside. A red backpack was tossed to the floor near the doorway. Spilling out of it was a variety of different red shirts and a few notebooks. A green backpack sat against the far wall next to the bed. It was zipped up, as if the owner was keeping it ready to grab it and run. DW carried Roman over to the bed. She tugged the covers back and set Roman down. He mumbled in his sleep. She draped the covers over him, and after a moment of debate, she leaned down and planted a kiss on his forehead. "Good night, kiddo," she whispered. She hurried out of the room and back downstairs. She still had to get Virgil, so Janus wouldn't be trapped on the couch forever. She rushed over to the couch. "Do you think he'll let go?" she asked Janus. Janus shrugged. DW decided to take a chance and gently lifted Virgil under her arms. Lifting him was no problem, but as soon as he was separated from Janus, he furrowed his brows and squirmed, muttering something in his sleep. DW hefted him into her arms. He wrapped his arms and legs around her and settled, resting his head on her shoulder. DW couldn't suppress the smile on her face. "Jan, I really want to keep these kids," she whispered. Janus huffed. "Well, I'm certainly not warming up to them at all." "Okay, Mr. I organized a break-in to save kids I barely know." "That's a very convoluted nickname." "That's the point." DW shifted Virgil in her arms. "You can get Sleeping Beauty upstairs. We might have to wake up Diana, 'cause my leg is just about shot for the day. I can't carry another kid." "Fair enough." As Janus worked on hoisting Logan into his arms, DW made her way back up the stairs with Virgil. He stirred as she opened the door to his room, but he didn't wake. DW stepped over Virgil's backpack to get to his bed. As she gently laid him down on his mattress, he mumbled something and waved at the ceiling. "What's that, kiddo?" she whispered.
Lights, he repeated sleepily.
You want them on? Virgil nodded, his eyes still closed. DW flicked the lights on. A dim yellow glow filled the room. Someone must have replaced Virgil's light bulb at some point during the day. DW pulled the covers over Virgil. She thought it would be unfair to only give Roman a goodnight kiss, so she brushed Virgil's bangs aside and planted one on his forehead. "Good night, kiddo," she said. Virgil snuggled under the covers and grabbed at the stuffed cat toy on his bed, the same one he'd given DW earlier in the car to help her calm down. "Good night, Dad," he slurred. DW shut the door behind her as she left the room, a smile on her face. She tiptoed across the upstairs living room. "Jan!" she hissed. Janus paused in the hallway, holding Logan in his arms. "What?" "He called me Dad." Logan muttered something and squirmed in Janus's arms. "Maybe Virgil thought you were Patton," Janus whispered. "I don't care. I'm taking it." She pointed to Logan. "You need help with that?" "No, he's just clingy. I'll go back down for Remus and Diana. You go to sleep, Dorothy. You've had quite the day." DW wasn't about to argue with that. She reached out and ruffled Logan's hair as she passed by Janus on the way to her room. "Good night, lovebirds." "Good night, Dorothy," Janus said, while Logan murmured something that might have been good night. DW stepped into her room and shut the door. Those kids were just adorable. She had never really thought about having kids of her own, but she had to admit that she would miss these kids when they inevitably went back to their father. Well, if their father survived. That thought made her grimace. She never liked Patton Hart all that much, but if he died, the kids would be devastated. She sat down on her bed and leaned down to remove her prosthetic leg. Now that her mind was on the subject of Patton, she couldn't get her thoughts away from it. She hardly interacted with Patton after the Poison Dart Massacre of 2010, so she didn't quite know what kind of person he was anymore. Obviously, he was a decent father, since his kids missed him so much, but that was the only information she had. Now that he was on the run from Wrath, would he turn back to his old ways? She shuddered at the thought. She didn't like the idea of Poison Dart being on the loose. But Janus seemed to trust Patton, more or less, so maybe he wasn't that bad anymore. DW didn't know what to think, so she decided it would be a problem for future DW to think about. She was too tired to deal with that now. However, as soon as she collapsed into bed, her brain decided that no, Poison Dart was not an issue for future DW, it was an issue for current DW, and she was going to lose sleep over it whether she wanted to or not. DW listened as Janus bustled about, carrying Remus to bed and guiding Diana to her own room. She heard Janus's footsteps walk back to his room. Once his door was shut, DW was left in complete silence. God, she hated silence. Now that the house was quiet and no one was around to distract her, her thoughts turned to what had happened at the university earlier. Patton's face lurked in the darkness every time she closed her eyes, and she could have sworn she heard him shouting at someone else to push her out a window. She grimaced and turned over in bed. Was Janus still awake? Was he okay? Was he even still alive? After an hour of tossing and turning and worrying about Patton Hart, DW concluded there was absolutely no way she was going to sleep tonight. Her blankets were tangled up in her limbs, and she'd managed to push half her pillows off the mattress and onto the floor. Every time she began to fall asleep, she felt like she was actually falling. Her right hip started to hurt after a while. DW groaned and sat up. It couldn't hurt to just check on Janus. Unwilling to reattach her leg just to check on Janus, she grabbed her forearm crutches from beside her bed and strapped them to her arms. She hauled them upright so she was standing on her one leg. She just had to make sure he was okay. That was it. She left her room as quietly as she could and approached Janus's door. She pushed the door open and peeked inside. 2 forms were covered by the blankets on the bed. Their chests rose and fell slowly but steadily. Janus rolled over in his sleep, and Logan muttered something under his breath. Relief washed over her like a wave. She retreated from the room and shut the door. It had been years since she'd last gotten anxious enough to check on Janus in his sleep to make sure he was alive. She didn't want that habit to return. DW didn't want to be stuck in her room, unable to sleep. Maybe stepping out onto the balcony for some fresh air would help. As soon as she stepped into the living room, her heart stuttered. The balcony doors were open, and someone was standing on the balcony. She tensed, ready to run into her room, but she took a deep breath and surveyed the situation first. The doors were open, but the person was still outside, so they had likely gone from inside the house to the balcony. They leaned on the railing facing the front yard, a blanket wrapped around their shoulders. One glance around the living room told DW that one of the guest room doors was open as well, the door to Diana's room. DW let herself relax a bit and walked across the living room. "Miss Short?" she said quietly, stopping to stand in the doorway. Diana jumped up and whirled around. She straightened her glasses.
"Oh, you scared me. Sorry. I hope it's okay that I'm out here. I couldn't sleep, so I thought I could use some fresh air."
"You and me both, kid." DW stepped onto the balcony and walked up next to Diana. "What's keeping you up?" she asked, leaning on her crutches. Diana shrugged.
"It's nothing, really. I just find it hard to sleep in unfamiliar places."
She furrowed her brow.
"But I'm also thinking about my family. Uncle Patton, specifically."
DW grimaced. That was exactly what she had come here to get her mind off of. "Are you doing okay?" DW asked. She didn't want to think about Patton, but she also didn't want to leave Diana alone if she needed something.
"Yeah,"
Diana sighed.
"More or less. God, my mom would kill me if she knew I was here."
DW tilted her head. "What do you mean?"
"My mom's never liked the criminal stuff she said Patton was involved in,"
Diana said.
"She always told me to stay away from him."
"Wait a minute," DW said. "You knew about the criminal underground before you started taking loans from us?" Diana nodded.
"My mom left the business a long time ago, before Patton did, I think. I don't know what she or Patton used to do. She never told me about it. The most she ever told me was stay away from Wrath's Blade." She snorted. "So I went to Chimera for help instead. I didn't do anything she didn't tell me not to."
DW let that sink in. It never really occurred to her that Patton Hart's sister would be Diana's mother. It should have been obvious. After all, Patton's brother certainly never would have had kids. "Do you want to go back to your parents?" DW asked. Diana's eyes widened slightly, and she shuddered under her blanket.
No, I'm already safe here,"
she said, a twinge of fear in her voice.
"There's no point going back. Besides, Mom never let me learn about the criminal underworld. I want to know more."
"You really don't, kid," DW said. "This business is dangerous. I don't think you want to be here."
"This business is also my only way out of my family,"
Diana said. "Kid, your whole family is part of this business," DW pointed out. "Once you get into it, they're going to drag you down. The underground is the reason your girlfriend is in a coma right now. You don't want anyone to know you're even thinking about being part of it. I think your best option would be to change your name and lay low, but Patton did that, and even he's being pulled back into it. You need to get out of this while you still can." Diana's shoulders slumped.
"But there's nothing else I can do. If I want to get out of my mom's controlling bubble, I have to go somewhere she won't follow me."
"She's probably strict on you because she wants you to stay the hell out of this business, and I can't blame her. Trust me, your other uncle would lose his mind if he found out you were involving yourself in all this." Diana stared out at the yard.
"My other uncle?"
she muttered. She whirled on DW.
"How do you even know that I might have other family members in the crime world? How well do you know my family? I just met you today."
DW grit her teeth. This is exactly why she didn't want to have this conversation. "I know Patton, so I know your family. Trust me, Patton has a sibling other than just your mom, and you don't want to meet him. And don't get me started about your dead grandfather." Diana blinked.
"Why wouldn't I want to meet my other uncle?"
DW took a deep breath. She did not want to talk about this. "I'm sorry, kid, but I can't think about your family, especially not right now. It's really been a long day. I don't need this to keep me up any longer." Diana's frustrated expression softened.
"Oh, sorry."
She turned back to the yard.
"Would I be able to ask Mr. Chimera about it tomorrow?"
"Probably, if he has time. I don't know how much he'll tell you. It's kind of a big Chimera secret." She shrugged. "But who knows? Maybe he will tell you."
"I hope so."
Diana clutched her blanket tighter around her shoulders. She reached up and tugged at a necklace that rested on her chest. It was a locket shaped like a heart, engraved with the initials DJ.
"Do you think Gemma's gonna be okay?"
she whispered. DW hadn't expected the topic to turn to that, but she probably should have. Of course Diana was worried about her girlfriend. Who wouldn't be if they were in her situation? That was probably part of why she couldn't sleep. "Honestly, kid, I don't know," DW admitted.
I get how it feels. I've had some really close friends end up almost dead numerous times, including Janus. She gently nudged Diana's side with her elbow. It's tough, but we've got good doctors, and they'll get her to a hospital if we need to. You've got nothing to worry about. Just wait it out. Diana swallowed.
Okay, I'll try to be patient. I apologize in advance if I lose my patience, though. I'm still processing all of this.
No worries, kiddo. I get it. It's a tough situation.
Yeah,
Diana sighed.
I just want her to be okay. She's the only person I can rely on.
She clenched her fists in the fabric of her blanket.
And I got her into this by borrowing money from a crime organization. It's my fault she's hurt.
Virgil thought it was his fault too, but it's no more your fault than it is his. You're not the one who hurt her. You couldn't have known this would happen. Diana shifted on her feet.
I guess, she muttered. I just worry.
That's perfectly understandable, DW said. She nodded towards the balcony doors. I think we should be getting to bed. It's late.
Probably.
Diana opened her mouth as if she was going to say something else, then clamped it shut again. What's the problem, kiddo? DW asked. Diana bit her lip.
Miss Chimera, if it's not too much to ask, would it be possible for you to help me book an appointment with a therapist?
DW relaxed. She had half thought that Diana was going to ask more about Patton. I can do that, kid. She nudged the doors open. Tomorrow. Come on, bedtime. Diana hefted the blankets around her shoulders and hurried through the doors into the house. DW shut the doors and locked them, hoping that no Chimera agents would climb up the balcony and knock on them in the middle of the night.
Good night, Miss Chimera,
Diana whisper-called as she crossed the living room to her room. Good night, Miss Short, DW said back. She walked across the living room and into the hallway. Before she could open her door, she found herself hesitating. She glanced back at Janus's door. She tried to tell herself she didn't need to check on him again. He was fine when she last checked. She stepped across the hallway and slowly pushed his door open. Janus and Logan were curled up under the covers exactly the way they were before. The blankets rose and fell with their breaths. She gave a sigh of relief and shut the door. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series. If you like what you hear and you want to read more, you can find the link to the fic and the author in the description. If you want to check out other podfics I've done, you can click on the playlist linked on the screen. See you next time!